So the big question we get a lot is about the age of the universe, the age of the Earth, and they use carbon dating, for example, to say, well, okay, it can't be a new Earth, all of that stuff. So I know they kind of base that opinion on uniformity to say that the universe was always, is, and has been as this. But how would you explain the radiocarbon dating issue? And,
I'm absolutely convinced the universe is at least 60 years old. All right, it's at least 83. I'll put my mom in there. It's at least 80. You can stay there. Go ahead, stay there. Christians disagree over how old the universe is, right? This is not a test for orthodoxy, whether you think it's old or young. In fact, Pastor Mike and I were just talking about this over lunch, and I was reading recently that one particular theologian thinks that Genesis 1 was really is a polemic against the Egyptian creation story. Because remember, who is Genesis 1 written to? It's not written to us. It's written to the people who lived in Moses' time. What happened to them? They had just come out of Egypt. They're not walking through the desert going, I wonder how old this place is, right? I mean, that's not their question, right? What they want to know is who is the true God. And the Egyptians had a creation story where somehow these finite gods already existed and they brought order to chaos. Moses comes along and says, no. God is outside of the universe. He created it, and he brings order to chaos just by speaking. There's no fight. There's none of that. He does that. So I think if you look at Genesis 1, which appears to have some poetic elements to it, right? It has 6 days, and it starts with creation days anyway. It starts with, and God said, and it ends with the same, it is good and all this. And days 1 and day 4 are congruent. Day 2 and day 5 are congruent. Day 3 and day 6. There's a rhythm to it. It's not Hebrew poetry, but there's poetry in there, right? I don't think this is necessarily a literal historical account where we add up the days and the genealogies and try and figure out how old the universe is. That's not what the text is intended to do. The text is intended to let us who the true God is, who brings order to chaos. All right? Now, if you want to believe it's young, that's a perfectly legitimate interpretation. But I think there's evidence from natural revelation, which we've been talking about, that seems to show the universe is much older, okay? And there are 2 revelations. God has written 2 books. He's written the Bible, but he also has written the book of nature, and you can't understand the Bible without the book of nature. You have to know certain. In fact, think about this, ladies and gentlemen. What's the first verse of the Bible say? It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You know what that assumes? First of all, that assumes you know what language is. It assumes you know what a beginning is. It assumes you know what God is. It assumes you know cause and effect, right? It assumes all these things. You have to bring that information to the text to understand what the text is. And so, while the universe could be old or young, I think the better evidence is it's old. But I don't really care how old it is. Because no matter how far back you go, you're still going to need a creator. Yeah. And you're still going to need a sustainer every single second the universe exists. Yeah. All right?